Okay, we'll get that even closer. Welcome, everybody. This is the GETAC Stroke Committee. I would remind you this is being televised or on the internet live, and so it's important for people to use the speaker, the microphones, and with audience participation, you need to come up and use the microphones and identify yourself. Saying that, I'd like to call the meeting to order and do a quick roll call. Dr. Cravens, you're here. Fillingham here. Monica? Monica's not here. Lisa? Here. And Ronnie? Here. Deb?
Here.
Porter? Yes. Paulina? Timothy Smith? And Denise Williams. Okay, and we have some excused absences that I will add to this later. First up on our agenda today is discussion of possible action items. The first is last time we voted to put together a liaison committee where members of this group would go to the other committees, in that some of the committees happen after this committee that may be difficult to have liaison reports on that. But does anyone have a liaison report from one of the other committees? Nope, nope, nope. Okay, and Homer has signed up for almost all of them, so we might want to share some of this load. Denise is going to do the education committee, Warren the pediatric committee. But basically the part of this is to go to the other committees, find out what things they need and what things we can do to help them and bring those issues back to us. Okay, so we'll put that on the agenda for next time from reports, and I will circulate a list again so that if there's a particular committee you have interest in, you can sign up for that. Next up is discussion on recommendations on the work group regarding education module for stroke patients, CE.
It works already. All right, good afternoon. Just kind of give you a synopsis. We talked about CE for EMS regarding stroke. Last time it came up, we were trying to figure out how much and what to do. So we got down as a little subgroup and discussed it. Our proposal is that we would like to see, and this, just so you know, it's not in addition to any CE that's in there. We're looking at where it has additional units in any approved category of pulling hours out. So we wanted to bring 4 hours to from the paramedic level, 3 hours from the EMTI level, 2 hours from the EMT, and 1 from the ECA. And this is in the 4-year cycle. So 4, 3, 2, 1, going down from paramedic down to ECA. So we looked at that. We felt that those hours would be sufficient, at least to introduce stroke and give people an opportunity to update what's going on in their system. We also addressed 4 areas that we wanted to look at as kind of the principles of what we wanted the CE to look like. We wanted to look, the 4 areas are anatomy and physiology with stroke recognition. Second would be transport considerations within the local area. Tying in with that is rack systems and protocols. And the last one is pediatric considerations for stroke. And those are just kind of the broad overall principles we'd like to see with the CE. We're more than willing to sit down with TTAP or anyone else to work with this. Our idea is to help advance stroke education within the state of Texas.
How would this information or CEs be made available? Have you thought about that?
We've thought about there's online vendors, individual coordinators can make their own content, or they can be purchased, make their own online, and how traditional delivery, however it works. The idea, we didn't want to mandate one specific way because some people have online capabilities, some do not. So if we looked at content versus, or general principles rather than specifics. So for A&P and recognition, that may be, for a paramedic curriculum, the 4 hours, that may be 15 minutes on A&P and go into recognition and then spend the bulk of the time with transport considerations. So we figured if we address it that way, then trying to say 1 hour per. And then, again, making it easy, flexible enough, whether it's online, whether it's a traditional educational program. The other is that we talked to different online providers, and they're more than willing to work with us to get this going. And their comments were, if I can paraphrase, was tell us kind of what you want and we'll help build it and get it out there and see about getting it approved. So that's what we came up with. We felt that these 4 topic areas would help us meet the needs of stroke education now, but be flexible enough to move forward with the future. So as advancing technology goes, we're not mandating one specific technology. We're looking at principles of care. So as technology and care evolves, these areas could still be looked at on a continuing basis. That's real short, guys.
Outstanding. Because we have several different topics, and I think this is such a great topic, is there any public comment or suggestions right now that anyone wants to address to EMS, CE, and education? Okay, seeing none, let's move on. Next up is discussion, and basically discussion in regards to comprehensive stroke centers. As some of you may or may not know, Joint Commission will start certifying comprehensive stroke centers starting July 1st. Online applications will be accepted by Joint Commission starting April 1st. That's correct, April Fool's Day. DNV also has a comprehensive stroke center certification. The last I heard, they hope to start their comprehensive stroke center certification the first of the second quarter. Previously, to remind you, this committee and some other committees have recommended to the state that the criteria for comprehensive stroke centers should be based on the Brain Attack Coalition and the metrics paper on comprehensive stroke centers in stroke. And so one of the things I did, because our center is very interested in doing this, and obviously it's important in a RACS transport plan and bypass plan, I wanted to have Jane Guerrero tell us what the DSHS thinks about this at this time.
When we first started this journey with doing a stroke system, and we rolled out the stroke rules, we only had the ability to do the primary designation. And during the time that the rules were developed, that primary designation is based off a certification of that disease-specific care by the Joint Commission. And that's the way our rules read. Then when we rolled in the level 3, that was through a TTAF process, which is incorporated into our rules as another survey organization identified by the department. Then DNV came along for the primary. They started offering a primary certification for that, for strokes certification. And one of the ways we kind of evaluated their program is that we compared the two programs, the Joint Commission and the DNV, to see that they were comparable and so that we could accept either or. Now we have kind of a dilemma on the comprehensive stroke certification, as we now have two national organizations that are accrediting bodies by recognized by CMS, but we've not, as far as the state, looked at their program. So in essence, we said in our rule that we would take a certification from an entity that had not developed a certification yet. So it's kind of an iffy position for the state. We would like to see or verify, I guess, that both the Joint Commission and or the DNV process is actually what we want it to be for a comprehensive stroke centers, and that it meets what we anticipate or what the state has intended for it to meet. Before we begin that process of accepting that certification for designation. So from our perspective, we would like to see some type of whether comparison or evaluation or some feedback from you and your committee possibly on what you think these two programs are. Are they comparable? Do they actually do what we want them to as far as designation process for the state?
Okay, and so I'll make a motion to the committee that we form a work group to review the certification of the DNV Joint Commission and any others who want to do it, and then make a recommendation to the state if we feel that that's acceptable. Second. Discussion?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, none. Any opposed? So we've formed a work group. We have any volunteers to be on the work group? I certainly will volunteer. Deb, Lisa. Okay, George. Everybody?
Basically, everybody.
Everybody?
Anyone not want to?
Okay, everyone. The good news is DNV and Joint Commission have sent me their certification process. So I think it should be fairly straightforward to compare the two entities and also then compare that to our previous recommendation, which was the stroke paper metrics and the Brain Attack Coalition's standards. Now realize Brain Attack Coalition standards was written back in 2005, back when there were horses and carriages and stuff like that. So there may be some changes. Well, great. So we'll do that, and we'll try to have that back to you by the next meeting, because it'll be very relevant that that's when the certification process will start. And I think it's very relevant because many RAC's transportation plans have bypasses of bypass to the highest level of stroke center on 15 minutes, things like that. And the other thing that I would be interested in while you're here is a survey was sent out to the RACs on transport plans and stuff, and if you could give us an update on that.
The results are back in, but they have not been analyzed or put together in a report. I've seen just the raw hard data, and I'm not sure when that report will be, the analysis will be complete, and I can try to bring you that back. If the report's not ready by May, bring you back a potential timeline for that, if that's acceptable.
That'd be great. I mean, what do you guys think? Yeah, I mean, I would be very fascinated to see the nuances from different places. I know that the Houston RAC is slightly different than the Austin RAC, but then there's also the rural and frontier areas versus Dallas. I mean, everyone has a slightly different part of the elephant, so I think this would be fascinating. Okay. Moving on, to keep everyone out of here on time, is Wanda here? Wanda's going to do a report on the outcome of regional stroke health screening conducted by the Border Regional Advisory Council.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me? Okay, it sounds like it's on. Is it now? I'll project. My name is Wanda Helgeson, and I'm the Executive Director of Border RAC, and I'm going to present today with Todd Hagen, who's our previous chair and is one of our very active members in Border RAC. We wanted to tell you about a program that we did last October. We, like everybody else, struggle with looking at actually the Stroke Awareness Month of May, because that falls into Trauma Month and EMS Week and Hospital Week and Nurses Week. And so we opted to use October with the International Stroke designation during that month. And we devised what we called Stomp Out Stroke. It was a screening program that we did in all of our areas. So, go back one. I think we're, okay, so let me just tell you, we utilized both Texas and New Mexico, and we had a rural area in Texas and a rural area in New Mexico, and then Las Cruces and El Paso. Across the course of the day, we had about 6 different screening sites, and we screened 857 individuals, short of my goal of 1,000, I'm sorry to say. But we did compare the demographic information that we got with our latest census data of 2010, and the age and ethnicity were right in line with our census, and the gender, as you would, I guess, are not surprised. We had a few more in our screening that actually meets our census as far as females, but that's probably typical for who we see at our screening.
So one of the screening tools that we used was to try to find out about a little past history and so on. And diabetes being very prevalent in our area, that was one of the things we asked about. When we looked at the data that's available from the Texas Cardiovascular Health and Wellness Program, our RAC is listed as having a 7.3% incidence of diabetes compared to the state at 6.5%. But the ones that we screened, those 857 individuals, we had almost 14% as reported as being diabetic and being treated for that. Then we asked some risk factors for diabetes, even if they didn't list themselves as being a diabetic. There were 7 risk factors that we looked at. No one listed all 7, although one person did have 6 out of the 7. But as you could see, a large majority, over 50% of them, had multiple risk factors for diabetes.
When we asked them about stroke history, 26% said yes, that they did have a family history of stroke, and 3.6% said yes, that they had actually had previous history of signs and symptoms. That's comparing our 2010 Get With the Guidelines data of 1.2%, so that is elevated. And what we found interesting was that if you look at that, about 2.5% who say that they have experienced signs and symptoms of stroke did not seek medical attention. We wanted to know how many of those individuals actually had been prescribed blood pressure medication, and 226 of them reported that they had been prescribed medication, and just over 11% actually admitted that they're not compliant with their medication regimen. We asked the same thing about cholesterol medication. 170 say that they have been prescribed medication, and 16.5% admit that they are not compliant with those medications.
So after using the screening tool for those that fit any of these categories, we did provide some targeted education that same day while they were there at the screening sites in regards to their medication compliance or blood pressure control, the importance of taking those medications as prescribed. We also, the stroke committee had set up some pre-designated guidelines that if anyone had a blood pressure that was over certain parameters that the stroke committee all agreed on, that we were going to offer and suggest transport by EMS to the emergency department. At the sites combined, we did have 8 individuals who met that criteria, and yet, maybe not surprisingly, but surprisingly, all 8 refused the transport by EMS to the emergency department.
So I think what we learned when we did our screening tool, we will make some changes to that next time. We did record zip codes. So our intent is to go back to the zip codes that had the highest prevalence and do some targeted education to those zip codes, and then repeat the screening and see if those zip codes again appear to have been decreased in either signs and symptoms or improved compliance with medication administration, those kinds of things. We were fortunate that we had a fabulous turnout from our border RAC individuals, both in the New Mexico and the Texas side. We had nurses from facilities, we had EMS providers at every site, so we were well prepared to transport people that we felt needed to go to the hospital. Some of the questions, however, were confusing. We tried to choose screening tools that were well used, but they were confusing. So as an example, as one of the risk factors was, I rarely exercise. Yes or no? So yes, do I rarely exercise, or no, I don't exercise? So when we do that again, we were confused. So when we do that again, we will clean up some of those questions, I think, that will probably give us truer information. But all in all, it was a great experience for us. We think we gathered some good data on a go-forward basis, and we're going to provide the information. We're going to go back and compare our Texas and New Mexico screenings, and then provide information back to those areas so that they can help us with the education. Questions for us?
I have a question. Do you remember offhand what blood pressure parameter you used for recommending sending the patient to the emergency room?
I think we used 180 over 100.
180.
At that point, we told them that we thought that they should seek immediate medical care, and that we had EMS folks there, and that they would be happy to take them.
And they were otherwise asymptomatic, I
Yes.
presume? Excellent.
And in many cases, we were at the shopping mall, so they had, places to go and things to buy. One of the things we did, we intentionally set out to try to get we went to malls. We did have one location at a Lowe's, which we would try to increase that because we thought we would get more men if we went to Lowe's, because some of them, if we tried to make them go to the mall, would make them stroke. So, but interestingly enough, we were able to get a Lowe's site in New Mexico, but not in El Paso. I don't know what they thought we were going to sell or do or whatever, but we'll try to specifically target where we think we'll get more men next time. But the ratio wasn't too bad. It was very interesting. I don't know how other parts of Texas are, but in El Paso, if you go to the shopping mall, you have a number of generations in your family with you. And so it was good for us that even if mom and dad or grandma was being screened, all of the kids stood there and listened to the education. They listened to us identify signs and symptoms. So that was good. We did not do blood sugars because we didn't know if they were coming from lunch or whatever, and that was just fraught with are you, aren't you, those sorts of things. Nor did we weigh them. We had charts that they could look up what they weighed, how that equivalated to their BSI, and tell us, are you above where you should be? And most of them were like, oh, heavens, yes. So those are a few of the drawbacks that we had. But all in all, we thought it was a good experience for us. We got good information.
It's excellent. Other questions?
And next year, by golly, we're going to get 1,000.
Do you plan to publish this?
We do hope to do that, yes.
Uh-huh. And so did you have, just curiosity, did you have an IRB? Was this a retrospective analysis or?
It would be retrospective.
Uh-huh. And then I'm very interested, what's your plan for next year?
We want to do the stroke screening again. We want to compare just the general issues of the numbers that report that they're diabetic, their medication compliance, but we absolutely want to compare the data zip code by zip code.
Well, I think this is outstanding. I think this is something you could give to the local media. There are all sorts of places you can go with this, and thank you very much for presenting it.
Thank you very much.
So, Dick, Dr. Huey is very nice. He's going to do a presentation for us on medication tissue plasminogen activator, TPA.
For a great presentation. I had a 50-slide presentation on indications and how to use it, and I decided we'd all have strokes at that time. So I'm going to make just a few comments. I am the chairman of the stroke subcommittee for STRAC, South Texas, and I'm also the medical director of the service for the Baptist Hospital System. So those are my disclosures. We have a 5-hospital system in San Antonio. 3 years ago, there were no primary stroke designated hospitals in the San Antonio area. We were transporting complex strokes to Austin or to Houston or to San Angelo or wherever. A crisis arose, and so several of the hospital systems decided they were going to start stroke programs. At the current time, we now have 11 primary stroke designated hospitals, 3 of whom are applying for comprehensive or will be applying for comprehensive. So you can see the progress that has been made in that interim. The EMS and the STRAC has been very instrumental and very important. They have a bypass plan. All of the strokes that are designated as a stroke alert in the field are supposed to bypass all non-primary stroke designated hospitals. They're supposed to go to the nearest one available. We're struggling right now with deciding how do we decide in the field which ones have to go to a comprehensive center. Does that make it too complicated for the person in the field? Is that too many questions? Right now, our RAC uses the Cincinnati, and I know some of the others are talking about using the LASS to see if that's a bit more comprehensive or not. I don't know where we will get with that. Our STRAC meetings are well attended. We have attendees from all of the primary stroke hospitals. We have a couple of physicians that attend on a regular basis. We have EMS and fire. Our medical director and assistant medical director attend our STRAC meetings on a regular basis. And so we have a good comprehensive plan associated with that. There were some interesting things at ISC for those that did not get to attend this last time. all talking about how do we get these patients treated more quickly, and what are important. One primary thing appeared to be early alert of the hospital that EMS is bringing in a patient with a stroke alert. That seemed to be very important in about 20% of the cases. So they looked at all of the different factors that seemed to weigh. Doing that and the door to CT time and having TPA drawn up immediately when you think you have a case that might be a TPA candidate, all of those seem to be the things that made the most difference. It was interesting, they had a comparison slide, and I do not have that slide with me, in which they talked about all the different things involved with all of that. But those three things seem to be major players. One of the things that they do in our hospital system, at least, is the EMS screens the patient out in the field. They call a stroke alert. They notify us that they're on the way. When they come into our system, at least, they're screened either at the ambulance bay or at the door. If they're felt to be a stroke alert, they don't get off of the gurney. They go straight to CT and are transported there. And so